Alright, so here we are in MidiPipe again, and today we're going to talk about the channel router as well as the keyboard split tools. And you might have noticed I don't have my usual MIDI in, MIDI out and A-list tools in my pipe. If you want more information about those, you can check out this video. You might also have noticed that I don't have my keytar with me, and that is because today's tools deal with channel routing and in GarageBand, which is my DAW, you cannot really assign different tracks to different channels. Basically, it all gets summed together, and so there's no utility really in using these tools with it. So nothing for me to show you, but I can still describe them to you and give you some examples of how you might use them in your DAW of choice. So let's start with the channel router, and I'm just going to drag it here into my pipe. And as you can see, you have a list of all 16 MIDI channels. And then you have kind of this little drop-down menu, and basically you can decide to convert notes or any other kind of MIDI message from the channel that they were sent from into a different channel. So if I set this, for instance, to channel number 5, right? So my MIDI controller, my keyboard or whatever, sends MIDI information on channel 1. That information reaches your laptop, reaches MidiPipe. MidiPipe converts it to channel number 5, and then it sends it out into your DAW. So what your DAW receives is information on channel 5, even though your controller is sending it on channel number 1. And of course, you can do that with any channel. If your controller sends information on channel 8, for instance, you could convert this to channel number 4. So your DAW now receives MIDI notes, CCs, program change messages, whatever, on channel number 4. So, you know, very useful little utility tool. Let's remove it. Let's have a look at the keyboard split tool, which is also very, very useful. Now this applies only to notes, right? That's the first big difference. The channel router, all MIDI messages. The keyboard split tool is just for keys, so for note on and off information. And here is its main pane, right? So basically, if you did use this, all of your notes, no matter which octave, would be sent through on a certain channel, which you can probably set on your controller. What this allows you to do is to kind of split your keyboard in such a way that notes below a certain note, so in this case below C3, are sent through on the original channel that they were sent on, whereas notes above C3 in this case, but you can of course set this to any note, right? Notes above the note you set will reach your software on a different channel, right? So if I set this to maybe 16, right? Let's assume that my keyboard sends on channel 1. So notes below C3 will still go through on channel 1, and notes above C3 will be converted to channel 16 and then reach your DAW, right? So possible way to use this would be to have two separate tracks with two different sounds on each one. Maybe a piano patch on the first track and a strings patch on the second track. And then you would set up your tracks in such a way that the first track only receives MIDI notes on channel 1 and the second track only receives MIDI notes on channel 16. And then you would use this tool like this, and everything below C3 would, you know, pass through MidiPipe unscathed, reach your DAW on channel number 1 and trigger your piano sounds, but notes above C3 would be converted to channel 16, meaning they would not reach your piano track, because that one only listens to notes on channel 1. They would be received by your strings track, listening for notes on channel 16. So now you have two different patches on different areas of your MIDI controller, which is very useful. Of course, we have some extra options here. So here's the first one. We can decide to only convert notes coming from channel 1 or, you know, any other channel. You can select the channel here. And this is very useful because if I activate this, then so long as my keyboard controller or my MIDI controller is set to send notes on channel 1, the transformation we set up here in the keyboard split pane will take effect. But if I set my keyboard or MIDI controller to send notes on channel number 2 or 5 or 8 or whatever, none of this will happen. It will only convert nodes above C3 to channel 16 if the original channel is number 1. If we set a different original channel, no transformation will happen. This is very useful to kind of limit the scope of the tool. Maybe you have multiple different controllers set to different channels, but you only want the conversion to take place on the one controller that sends nodes on channel number 1. And the other ones, which are set to maybe number 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever, on those you don't want any of this to take place, right? So that's the first very useful option. And then we can also transpose the moved nodes. This is super useful because here's the thing. Let's go back to our previous example. You have the piano, strings, and nodes below C3 trigger the piano sound, and nodes above C3 trigger the string sound. So that is all well and good, but that means you only have those higher octaves available for strings. But maybe you want to hear the strings played at the lower octave. And so you could transpose the moved nodes by maybe 12 semitones, so 1 octave lower, meaning that notes that you play on your keyboard or controller above C3 will trigger the strings, but the strings patch will not actually play back notes above C3. It will play back notes above C2. That's what you're going to be listening to. So even if you're playing C3, C4, C5, what you will hear is C2, C3, C4. You could also go further, minus 24. So now, even if you play C3, you will hear your strings playing C1, right? So you can have both the strings and the piano on the lower octaves in terms of what you hear, but in terms of what you play, you still have them separated neatly, as shown in this pane. Of course, you don't have to transpose them downwards. You can also, set this to plus 24. If you want to have really, really high string notes, it's up to you. But you have the power to do that, is what I'm trying to say. And that's a pretty neat addition, if you ask me. Alright, so that's all I have for you today. Next time we're going to have a look at the randomizer tool, so stay tuned for that as we make our way down to the curve transformer. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.